Are you ready to sip on something extraordinary? May I introduce the tea tonic, where every cup is crafted with care, nature's finest ingredients and a touch of magic. The tea tonic is 100% natural and have a wide range of single leaf teas, unique blends, all handmade to order using their specially designed recipes. The tea tonic use fully compostable and recyclable packaging and can also create bespoke blends just for you. Visit theteatonic.com and receive 10% off your entire order with the affiliate code BELLWITCH. And take a moment with the magic of spiritualities with the Tea Tonic of Leeds.
Darkcast Network, bringing our indie podcasts out of the shadows.
Did you see that the Yorkshire accent has been voted one of the most sexiest accents of 2024? Just saying. Now then, witches and beautiful souls, welcome back to the Bell Witch podcast with me, Swales, the friendly green witch, witching in the 21st century. It is December, yes. The festive season is upon us and it's all get your shop on, get ready for that Yule log burning, how exciting. And do remember to decorate your tree in your house with ornaments and such like. It is absolutely a witchy act and a spot of house magic for you right there. So, 2024 is coming to an end. It has been a heck of a year, don't you think? I think this year has been a year of learning to adapt and transform, and it's been very opposites, I feel. It's been a very yin and yang year, really. Personally, for me, it's been a fantastic year in terms of smashing goals, winning awards, doing stuff that scares me. But globally, we can't deny it. It has absolutely been a mess. Let's not dwell on that. You are here for good vibes only. And I know it's supposed to be a solitary witch episode, but dear witches, my life has been consumed by my little PTA and organising the massive Christmas event for my kids' school. It has been a mammoth job and it finally came to fruition last weekend. It was a great success. I am rather chuffed, raising a good total of money. We've been planning it since September and it's got slowly more and more work. So I just haven't had time to pull myself together to get a in-depth and well-researched solitary witch episode. Therefore, the next one definitely will be a solitary witch episode because I have more time to breathe. And also you'll get your bonus episode from me on Christmas Day because I really like that tradition and I'm going to keep it, yes. That will be the last instalment of the Elemental meditation series. It will be water, so it'll be a lovely little meditation around being in the sea or swimming under some kind of lake or something. I'll have to write it first. And I hope you enjoy it and I hope it helps with the Christmas Day chaos that we all seem to swim in on the 25th of December. In other news, I'm still prattling about on the TikTok thingy bob. You can follow me on the Bell Witch podcast, all one word. I'm doing quick little snappy videos about witch tips and sarcastic tarot meetings, which is just loads of fun. And also jogging, like Witchcraft jogging, and just bits of my life, really. It'd be lovely if you could join me over there and support this witch. Other ways you can support this witch and this podcast is buymeacoffee.com. Join the Patreon for as little as £1.50 per month. That's even less than a cup of chai for this witch. Or just share away and tell your friends. Give me a rating. What's really awesome is at the moment I've got 907 Spotify followers. How awesome would it be if I could get 1,000 followers for the new year? Start 2025 off the right way. If you could help me with that, it'd be just amazing if I could smash just one last goal of this amazing transformative year. Anywho, I will press play on this fantastic moot loot from my second international podcast guest, CJ, who is a very talented spiritual higher realms artist, published author, fellow podcaster, and all-round good egg. Again, this was recorded quite a while ago, and I am slowly catching up now. I am really slow at doing the interviews and then getting them out, but I'm getting better, so I hope you enjoy it. And the next one will be just little old me talking to you, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome, Chris, aka CJ, to the Bell Witch podcast. How are you doing? Are you all right?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have my second international podcast guest. Go me. But you sound kind of famous, to be honest, from my Googling and researching. So if you would like to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I wouldn't say I'm famous, but I have had people reach out to me from around the world, which is interesting. I published a book during COVID called The Spiritual Artist, and I am an artist, and I've been painting for like 20 years. And the book is about how do you practice getting in that place where you feel like you're receiving information from whatever you want to, some people want to call it God, a greater power, an angel. There's so many different names. I'll find myself painting and suddenly I lose track and I become something more than me. And then the painting kind of takes its own life and it creates its own story and it goes where it wants to go. So I wrote a book I started watching my process. And I was like, well, how do I do that? Why is it that on Monday, I have a wonderful experience and I feel that incredible sense. People call it in the flow. And then on Tuesday, I'm getting angry and I'm hitting the canvas. And one time I even ripped a hole in the canvas because I felt like I couldn't get to that space. So I wrote the book called The Spiritual Artist, which is each chapter is by itself. You can just flip through it. And it talks about how do you get in alignment with that greater power, which I have learned to call creative intelligence.
So would you say it's like the universe, like
Yeah.
universal energies and stuff?
I think so. Yeah, and I keep clarifying it more and more, but it's the space before manifestation, right? We're on the physical plane. It's the spiritual world, the world of the unmanifested.
Yeah, I mean, did you find me by looking for stuff about the artist's way by any chance?
I do actually mention the artist way in my book because my book came out of journaling. Have you ever done morning pages?
Oh, yeah, they've changed my life.
I took a class once and I was telling the teacher how much they changed my life because it gave me the ability to stand back and kind of watch myself. Like I would write notes and then I started rereading them like a year later and I'm like, look at this. I kind of just go into little loops, right? Like fear loops or lack loops. And so by stepping back, I could realize that there was a pattern in my life. And if I could step back from the pattern, I could be different or something different than what I had been. I really loved that process. But it's funny, I took a class and the lady, I said, don't you ever reread your notes? And she said, no, I throw them out. So have you reread yours or?
I never reread them. No, straight in the bin they go.
Do you still have them?
Not anymore. I've got some, but I binned a lot of them because that's the point, isn't it? It's like you empty your mind to create space for new creativity. And that's why it's so freeing because you're not going to get ridiculed on it or it's not going to get read even by yourself, which is brilliant. And it gives it power, I think.
Yeah, I think I see both sides, right? To just release it, because she talks about getting it out of your head, and that is also helpful. But I just guess I found that when I went back, I could see how I actually, how they say we're all pretty much like a program, that we're given a program from our family, from our religion, from our nation of origin, and we automatically follow that blueprint over and over again. I suddenly realized, wow, I could change it if I step back, and I could, maybe I don't have to be so full of fear or anxiety.
All the baggage that we're given. Have you done the ice way?
I didn't do, no, I only did the journaling part.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I've done pieces. I did the what does she call it? An artist retreat or a day,
Oh, the artist date.
date. Yes.
Yeah.
I do that and such. And yeah, she definitely was her book was cutting edge, and it is still used by a lot of people.
And that's how this podcast came about, because I was stuck. I did the artist way. I started to do poetry, and then I was listening to a podcast that abruptly stopped, and I was gutted, and I was really upset about it. And I said to the person, please come back, please come and do this podcast. And they said, no, why don't you do one if you're that bothered? And instead of me going like, as if, I actually went, actually, yeah, why not? And I think because I'd done the artist way, that allowed me to react in that way. And the rest is history, because here I am.
Here you are with your own podcast, right?
Yeah,
I do a podcast as well, and I love talking to different people about their creative process and how they think. It's always, you always learn something from other people.
absolutely. From all over the world, which is just amazing. Do you want to share with us like your process of art and tuning in and stuff? How does that work?
Yeah, I was listening to what you just said was a really good example. You were saying how someone critiqued and said, "Well, why don't you do your own?" And that's kind of what I believe. I believe that we learn. I wear this. I develop these bands, and they say, "Listen," because I believe that we should be listening to this voice inside of us that's leading us. And I believe that we are guided from this, what I call creative intelligence. And sometimes, even when something bad happens that we think is bad, like getting knocked off that podcast, that your first reaction could be, "This was bad," but there was a gift in it. And you step back and you go, "Oh, maybe I should do my own." And say, I think that's really this divine creative intelligence is poking you. It's like nudging you to follow a direction, right? And I'll tell a story to your listeners. I'm working on a solo art show, and I was painting this weekend and have this huge painting. And I was just doing some touch up. And I started touching it up. And when I was done, I looked down, and a big, horrible gob of paint had dripped down, fell right into the middle of an area of the painting that was a beautiful mix, like a blend of color that I could not recreate. And it was right there. And my first reaction is, right? Like, what went wrong? And then I thought, wait a minute, maybe creative intelligence is telling me something here. Maybe I should take that shape out, or maybe I should draw a new line there. So what I did is I extended a line and I changed the shape so that it would cover that mistake. And I stood back and I go, it looks even better. It looks better. But I would never have done that. I wouldn't have taken that risk had not something happened that was unexpected and even unwanted.
Trust in the process.
Yeah. And so when you do a podcast, I'm sure it's the same way. You just sit there and you're present and you just let it flow, right?
You get ideas as you live, don't you? Stuff comes to you, and then people ask you questions on stuff, and you go like, oh, that'd make a really good podcast topic. So it's being open to new opportunities.
I love to engage, and I'd love to ask you, how do you define a witch?
Somebody who's in touch with the earth and follows the seasons and like listens to the messages from nature, and you celebrate Sabbats and does magic. I mean, it's not all about magic. It's about celebrating the earth, really, and looking after it. That's
I love
my
that.
definition. Yeah.
I am working on a second book, and I started, I say downloading it, right? It's about just that. It's about looking toward nature for guidance, to see how the rules of nature apply to us as humans. And if we pay attention to it, we can learn so much from nature.
I think because we're all just so distracted as a nation of humans, we're so unplugged from it. So I think there's going to be a movement now to get plugged back into it and get your feet on the grass and watch a bee just being a bee. And you don't always have to be completing tasks, making money, hustling. Just enjoy, be present, and
I love it. I think you're right. I think that there's going to be I sense there's going to be a great movement back toward alignment with nature. I feel like we've done a horrible thing that we're so my son, he hardly goes outside. This young generation, they're on computers all the time, and there's a separation from nature, and nature's so grounding. But it also, what I love about it, in what I talk about in my book a little bit too, is my book talks about finding your creative DNA, that there's something unique within you. And when I look toward nature, that's what I see. When I was a kid, I remember collecting nuts and stuff, and I was fascinated by acorns. I'm fascinated by an acorn. The texture, the smoothness, the color, the multiplicity of them, just the sheer number of them that fall down from the tree. But then I'm also fascinated by like a pine cone. And a pine cone is so different too. The way they open up and the seeds fall out. They're doing the same thing. They're supposed to spread the seed, right? But how different, right? They're so individualized and unique in how they do it. The creativity of what they do, just like what you're doing with the podcast, is very different from mine, and yet the same. We talk to people, we're sharing ideas, we're talking about nature, coming from two different ways.
You are sounding like a little bit of a witch there, CJ.
I think
Definitely
I am.
a pagan.
Well, what's funny? I think pagan has gotten such a bad rap. The word itself, right? There's people that bristle at the word pagan. When I was raised Catholic, and I'm going to tell you a story. I'm a little older than you, but what were you raised as?
My mum was a spiritualist and a medium.
Oh.
So I always grew up with spooky goings on and tarot and oracle and crystals and yeah.
Oh, you're so blessed. I mean, that really, you're so lucky to have that. I did not. I was raised very traditional Catholic. And when we were young, they would have these drives where we would make donations. I kid you not, donations to save the pagan babies.
What?
Yes, they would collect money to send to far off countries to save pagan babies. That's how they worded it, pagan babies, as though they were just this horrible thing.
Who were the pagan babies? What?
I don't know. I don't know. It just anything that wasn't Catholic, I guess, right? I mean, I find it funny how there's such duality, and religions want duality and separation. And so I am like a witch, that I want inclusive. I want connection, oneness.
Yeah, and a pagan is somebody who works with the earth, who looks after the earth. So if you've got an allotment, or you recycle, or you divide your cans and your glass, you garden, all them things mean you're a pagan, because you're working with like Mother Gaia and Earth. You're helping Earth, so you are a pagan by doing it.
Well, I love it. I mean, I recently I studied theology and all, and I took a class in the Old Testament, and the pagan, well, I wouldn't know if I'd use the word religion, but the pagan sense of looking at the world was here long before Jesus Christ and all the Bible. I mean, there was a history of that throughout man. It's very old,
I mean, it had to be that way because people back then had to depend on Earth to survive. So they had to learn how to work with it and have a relationship with it and stuff. So it was unavoidable to be a pagan. You had to be just to survive it.
And we're back to that, right?
We're getting there. Yeah. There's definitely a shift back to it. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
And we have to take care of the earth. I mean, it's even more today. We're realizing we've got to take care of this. Stewards of the planet.
Stewards of the planet. I like it. Is that the title? Could be the title.
That's the title. Now, my book has nature in the title, though. When you're doing creative, when you write, it changes. And so right now, it is just about that. It's about looking toward nature to heal yourself, looking toward nature not just in this, you might say, hey, looking to nature you could try some herbs, or, you could try some medicinal things. But I'm also talking about the psychology of looking toward nature. Let me explain. If someone is struggling with abundance and they're feeling like they don't have enough money, and they come to you and say, hey, I feel like there's not enough in the world and I'm afraid and I don't have money, you can sit them down and say, there is I call it a spiritual law of nature. And that spiritual law of nature is abundance. I mean, right? When you sit under that oak tree and you see 200,000 acorns, right, coming from that tree, there is abundance in nature. It's a law. And so I can affirm for someone who might be feeling without or poor that no, look, align with that. Just align your consciousness with the abundance that's already here, and you will be abundant. People are like, and I think one of the things I would love to talk about with you is I read in this book recently that a great misjustice was done with Darwin, because Charles Darwin claimed that nature was competitive, that the whole survival of the fittest. And what he did is he put that into the mindset of people, that the strong one is you want to be the strong one and you want to beat the other one. But actually, nature is very cooperative. It has harmony and cooperation, and it's balanced, right? If an owl seeks a mouse, it's balanced. There's too many mice. It's all totally balanced. And you don't want one. You certainly wouldn't want all mice or all owls. There's a beautiful harmony already built into nature. So that's pretty
Yeah.
neat.
I never thought about that, about how he was saying it was survival of the fittest. It's just not true.
No, and
Weird.
it's kind of, don't you think, Swales? It's sort of what we're looking at on the whole global world, right? Is this idea that if I take your land, this country taking that country, these people taking that people, that's still in that survival of the fittest, right?
Yeah.
I will subjugate and take away. No, the societies that have lasted the longest on our planet have lived in harmony. I will produce this, you produce that, we exchange, we're in harmony, we're in flow.
Yeah, we all need to get back in there. We are working to get back there, but capitalism prevents it.
It sure does, I'll tell you what.
I'm always walking around my life going like, capitalism, boo!
There's feature. I was telling my husband this morning, there's benefits to capitalism, but there's holes in it, right? There's big holes in it, and we have to be able to balance that. We have to have the knowledge to say, okay, we can't let one company just take over the whole world, or there has to be a balance, just like nature.
Can learn a lot from nature. We just need to get off his phones, get off his tech,
Yeah.
and look.
Autumn's Oddities is a strange and unusual podcast made by The Strange and Unusual, me, Autumn Gruby. Each week, I'll be taking you through some of the creepiest cases true crime has to offer. It won't only be true crime, I'll also be covering cryptids, haunted places, haunted things, and the true stories that inspired horror movies. Listen every Monday and Friday for new episodes, and remember, if it's creepy and weird, you'll find it here.
So what's your favorite story about nature? Like, what's your favorite message from?
You need the lightness and you need the dark. You need the summer, you need the winter, because you can't have one without the other, which is very much what witchcraft is about in general, like shadow work and light work. You're brought up thinking life, to be successful, it's always positive and you can't be feeling sad, because then you're depressed and it's a spiral. But it's not if you kind of live with both duality, like you said, balance and all that. It works well if you let it work, if you kind of like take your hands off the controls and follow the momentum of life. That's how I'm living at the moment.
Yeah.
I didn't used to live like that. I used to be really hell-bent on being in control of everything all the time, and it's exhausting. It really is.
Yeah, and just trust that I like to use that word creative intelligence, but that it will guide you. When you do that, suddenly that paint drop was actually guiding me, and the same thing with you. There's a force that's talking to us, And sometimes it talks to us, like you said, in dark.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not always fun. Right?
Totally. Yeah. I want you to talk to me about your art because this is what it's all about. Tell me the story of how you got into it and
Oh,
like how it becomes a higher realm type thing.
okay. So I believe that when we create art, we are creating where some power, some energy is coming through us. I believe that it's about stepping into that energy, and all these lessons that we just talked about, like you just mentioned about letting go, is kind of how I create a painting. So I do retreats, I do spiritual art retreats. I'm doing one in Texas in this fall, and then in the spring I'm going to be in Santa Fe, and I'm trying to work on one in Spain.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I'm getting overseas,
Yeah.
maybe. And what I do is I get people together and I teach them how to be in that creative art space. And so part of it is also feeling your body. So we do what's called physical repetitions, and we'll sit in front of a canvas and use a brush, and I'll have them do what's called a semic drawing. And a semic drawing is where you kind of do a scribbling. It almost looks like calligraphy. It's not channeled writing. It's not readable. You know how I'm sure you've heard about people that channel and write.
Mhm.
It's not that. It's more just like this expression of you through scribbling. I have it on my YouTube channel, a demonstration of how you do it. And you blend the colors around. And what I believe is that you will identify that if we took 20 people and we put them in a room and gave them a box and gave them 3 colors of a crayon and a piece of paper and said to do this asemic writing, each one of us is going to do something totally unique. And so I believe that is spirit coming through us in the uniqueness of who we are. And so I walk around the room and I'll show all the students, look, you have a uniqueness to you and you need to learn to follow it. So they follow it by recognizing, well, I like curves. Another person, I like maybe jagged lines. Some people might want to make their art really dark, some really light, some half and half. But I show them from the very basics. You know, when you were a little kid and you would sit on the floor and you would take crayons and just scribble. Have you
Mhm.
ever done that? It's
Yep.
it's sort of like that. So I use that to teach people how to become an abstract artist by building onto it up and up and up. So I have a show this fall. I'm doing a solo show and it's called Love Roller Coaster. Each painting is based off of a song. So I paint it to a song. Some of them are happy songs about love. Some of them are not so happy. you know, I got a Billie Eilish in there. But you know how you feel that woman's depressing. But I love her music. So I paint them to listening to the music. And when you come to the show, everybody wears their ear pods, and I've created a Spotify playlist. And you scan the barcode and you listen to the song while you look at the painting. So it's sort of like an interactive art show. And I have pictures of that on my website as well. But I want people to realize that emotions come through us, but they aren't us. You know what I mean? They just
Mhm.
flow through us, and that we have to feel them, like you said. You have to feel it. You have to feel it, but don't become too attached to it. Just let it keep going.
There's
So
something about when you do art, it's kind of like meditating, isn't it? Because you go to a higher realm, like your higher self, I think. And in a way, that's how
right.
magic works as well. When I do, because I make sigils, which are kind of like individual runes, like personal rune stones. And what you were describing at the beginning is similar to how I am, when it becomes its own thing and it grows, it's got a life of its own. It comes alive, and I'm not doing it anymore. It's doing it. Someone else is doing it. So I do understand. To me, what you're talking about, it does sound a little bit like magic, like higher realm magic.
I think it is. I think it's coming from the spiritual world, the spiritual realm, and you're co-creating with it because it is you're having an impression on it. What you're creating is part you and part this higher realm. And it's totally unique, right? If all of us did this, if we tried to do what you're doing, I cannot do what you're doing. Even if I tried, I couldn't do it. Yeah, it's so that's kind of what the whole book is about. And when my people come on a retreat, I'm teaching them to let go. It's not easy, right? Sometimes you sit there and you go, no, I wanted it to be this color, or I wanted it to look this way. And you're like, but it wants to look the way it wants to look. Right? And so
Yeah.
you just let it go. Oh, I was going to share a story. I just interviewed a guy on my podcast from Los Angeles, and he does art where he'll talk to you and he'll feel it, what he's hearing from you, and he'll do a drawing, and he calls it color coding. And each drawing is related to you. And then he doesn't call it psychic, but he does an intuitive reading of who you are based on your art. And we had this great conversation about this, about how, there's this experience and you kind of have to stand back and you just feel it and you let it happen. And he told me that one of the things that he saw with me when he did my reading is that I have a good ability to just kind of let go and let it happen. And that I have to keep going that way. Not always easy.
It is about letting go. It's the journey. It's not the destination. It's the journey. It's that old cliche. How did you get into it then? Is it something you've done for a long time then? Because you mentioned you were brought up in a religious family. I mean, are you still religious?
I'm spiritual, but I believe it's a personal relationship. I'm not religious, but I would like, once again, we'd get down to words, right?
Yeah.
And for me, religion is someone that follows a lot of rules and dogma. And, there's like certain procedures to be Baptist or Catholic or Protestant. And that's not me. I totally believe that there's many, many paths to God or to a relationship with God. So I'm spiritual, and it's a personal relationship. It is something that started very young. So I'll give you a little background. I was born to a very conservative Catholic family, and I'm gay. And so when I started hitting puberty and realizing that I didn't fit in, I was going to church. I was very active. I taught CCD to kids. I did drawings and stuff of Noah's Ark and all this. But when I started hearing the priest say stuff against to be gay, I kind of walked away from that. And so it's only through making art that I came back to recognizing that there is a place for me. There's a place for some spiritualness. It's just not in those traditional terms of Catholicism. And that's it keeps evolving. So who you are, as you know, keeps changing. And I'm really focusing on nature, which is funny. Which is probably why we were drawn together, because that's how spirit works, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I see that connection to all that is, to a greater power through nature. And that's where I want to go with the next book. So I do paint, but I feel like I want to go and take it into the nature world. I'm very much into nature. When I was a kid, I had plants in my window ledge. I grew things from seed. I was a gardener. I have a koi pond in my yard. I have a garden. I have tons of plants everywhere. I have 3 dogs. I love animals.
Ah.
So it's totally natural for me to keep going in that direction.
Was there a moment when you must have been painting and then being like, hang on a minute, there's something different going on here. It's more than just a painting. It's a connection.
Yeah. I think most people can relate to this, even if they're not painters. It can be someone that's making a dinner. Or there's every once in a while you have this experience where you're creating something and you just feel this energy flowing through you. And what you create, you're almost like, wow, did I do that? Like actually when I wrote my book, I go back and I read it and I'm like, who wrote this? I'm like, who wrote this? This sounds pretty good, right? And so when I paint, it's the same thing. I'll step back from a painting and I've learned to just go with it. But it's that incredible feeling. You have this incredible feeling, of lightness and connection. I'm sure you have that when you're making
Sigils.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just feel it, right?
It's really hard to describe, and if you got to experience it, really, it's bizarre.
I think we try to put things in words that sometimes can't be put into words. So I just hope if you're listening to this and you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll work on that, because I think everybody can relate to some point in their life where that magic happens. If you sit down, and I tell people, sit down and close your eyes and remember some time or place in your life. And it could be I remember when I was a kid, I used to go up there were some woods behind my house. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and it's sort of like it's rainy and ferns. It's similar climate to the UK, I would imagine. And I would sit in the middle of these woods, and there were violets, the little violets that grow out of the ground. And I just sat there, and it was like this place of magic. And look at the trees above me. And so now, if I'm in a situation where I'm feeling stressed or uncomfortable, I visualize myself back in those woods with the fern and the little purple violets and the trees. And that's nature once again, right?
When's this book going to be out? Is it in the making at the moment? Because I'm off one. I legit want to read it. It sounds ace.
Have you? You know what's funny? I just discovered. I don't know if have you discovered Chat GBT? Have you?
Yes, AI.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Is it writing your book for you?
No, but I could let it. But what it does do, it's so amazing. I wrote something this morning, and then I uploaded it and said, I asked it, does this flow? Can you understand what I'm saying? And it came back and said, point by point, this is good. You need a better transition here. It didn't fix it because I don't want it to sound Chat GPT. I want it to be me. But it did tell me, oh, the transition here is rough. Or you might want to explain science a little better. It says you're really justifying spirituality, but you need to talk about science a little bit more. So anyway, I just find it fascinating how it can do that. And what's really neat about it is you can ask for references. Like you could just get on there and say, remind me of that parable. So one of the things I asked it was, there's an old parable about, I think like it's a Buddhist thing, 5 blind men examining an elephant. And they all come from a different part of the elephant. And one says, it's like a rope. And the other one says, no, it's like a tree. And the other one person says, no, it's curly and moves around. And so I wanted to use that parable to describe how we all have a different viewpoint on life, but it's the same life. And if we could just step back and be more open-minded and say, okay, you're using the word witch and someone else might be using the word whatever, Jesus Christ, but it's okay, right? I don't have to control that. Then I can see the whole elephant, that it's the same elephant. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, it's perspective, isn't it? Different perspectives. We're all seeing the same thing as well, and we all have a different background, a different stance on it. And
it's wonderful. If we were all the same, it'd be so boring, right?
It would. There'd probably be less fights, though.
Yeah, you tell me about it.
Less handbag flinging.
But I try to get people. That's why when I say I'm a spiritual artist, I'm trying to get people to look at the spiritual side and not get so wrapped up on the physical side. Don't take the word so seriously. Don't take the procedure, the ritual, the boundaries. Look at the true meaning behind it. That's where we relate. We all are the same in the spiritual realm. We all want to be loved. We all want to feel love. We all want to be safe. Now, how we see that outpictured here on the physical realm, we argue over. But, that's kind of what I try to say with my parable of the elephant.
No, I got you. Yeah, it came through. Like the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Well, the elephant in the room. It's like, and I'm in the U.S. right now, and oh my gosh, politics are really nasty. It seems to me that we could come together a little bit better on what we can agree on, right? Like in that case, we all everybody wants to feel free. They're arguing over how and who can, but everybody should be allowed to be free. That to me, that's a basic principle. And actually, it's a principle of nature. Everything in nature is free. There's nothing you see in the natural world where something imprisons. Now, sometimes they feed, like they work together, like a moss will grow on a tree, or there's a, what do they call it? Copacetic relationship, or a
codependent.
Yeah, but there's not one just enslaving another. It's not natural. Now, there are certain things we have to agree to, is that we don't enslave other people. There are agreements. There are things that we have to say that it's not right to enslave someone or to take from someone.
Murky waters.
Murky waters.
You just mimic me.
I love the accent. No, I love it.
So you've got your own podcast,
Mhm.
and what's that all about? Tell the listeners.
I interview people. I interview people that are artists or what I would call spiritual leaders or new thought leaders. Like I would interview a therapist or someone. Next week, I'm interviewing some people that focus on how to deal with pain in your body. You know, how to process pain, which is really cool. So I'm reading their book and I'm going to interview them. I interviewed this guy I just talked to you about that talks about feeling emotions, and he does these drawings. He does these color code paintings. So it's all about the creative process. My podcast is about how we create, how do we create our lives? How do we create a painting? How do we create, beautiful artwork? Or I interviewed a woman that does these beautiful, she calls them, you'd love her. You should have her on your podcast. She is in New Mexico, and she does these sacred altars in nature. She goes around and she collects items in nature and builds what's called sacred altars. Have you featured someone like that?
No, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Totally.
I'll connect.
Yeah,
I will send you her
definitely,
name.
please.
She's wonderful. But it's very spiritual. Go out in nature and you commune with nature, and then you design these beautiful sculptures and you leave them there. And they're not pollution because they're all natural elements.
And they're temporary, and like nature takes them back. So what's your podcast called?
Oh, it's called The Spiritual Artist Podcast. And the name of the book is The Spiritual Artist. It's on Amazon, and you can search for it. And I think it's a great book. I think it takes a little bit of the artist way and kind of takes it a little further.
Have you got any tips on how to help people do this kind of art, like connect?
The biggest tip I could tell someone in order to create art is to turn off judgment. I think that's the biggest thing that keeps us away from creating original art is criticizing it. You do a stroke and then you start analyzing it. And if you just like you said, just feel it and let it happen, don't worry, it will become something. It will become something. And if you just keep going and going with it, it does. And that's a life lesson. When we use judgment anywhere in life, it turns it off. It closes the door rather than. So have you ever heard that there's actors do this? They do a practice called yes and it's a role playing. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what you do with your art. It's a yes and. Anything that happens, a blob of paint landed in the middle of my painting. Okay. And I don't resist it. I didn't get mad. I didn't walk away. I didn't throw the painting out. I go with it.
I try to do that with just talking instead of saying but, saying yes and like continuing with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Positive spin on it, isn't it? Yes and.
It works, right?
It absolutely does, yeah. Where could we find you? Plug yourself.
Yeah. You check out my website. It's called spiritualartisttoday.com. So www.spiritualartisttoday.com. I do retreats, and they're really great. You come and paint, and it's for beginners as well as very experienced artists, because I show you how to do what you talk about, asemic writing and scribbling, but turn that into something. And so I attract people that have been painting for 20 years, and then people that haven't painted for about 3 months. But believe it or not, we all have a great time. And we do stuff like we have cookouts by the fire and share stories, and it's an experience. So check that out, and check out my podcast if you want to hear about all these great people, sacred altars and those type of things, and color code painting. It's all on there.
I imagine these retreats are quite emotional as well. Do people end up getting quite like emotional there?
Yeah, they do. I think there's a lot of I do an exercise. I do a lot of meditation and mindfulness. And there's a lot of people that have pain with art. They've been shamed by what they do, or, so what we do a little exercise on the first night where we do a little clearing and try to remember that emotion. We all can remember like sometime where mom and dad, either they loved what we did or they made fun of it, and so we do a little ritual where we write something on a piece of paper, and that night we have a bonfire, and we do a release where we throw it into the fire and burn it. It is emotional, but great.
That right there is magic. That's a ritual, a magic ritual, letting go ritual, putting stuff in the fire and letting it burn. You're such a witch.
Yeah, I am. I think I am, or I guess I'll be a warlock, right? Is it? But yeah, like I said, I think we connect with people because there's always something that I do believe we're being guided, and so we're connected because you needed to hear something I was saying, and I needed to hear something you're saying, and go and that very well could be the nature aspect.
Do keep us posted with the book, and I'll let all my listeners know when it's out, and you'll get a flurry of British orders.
That sounds
Be
great.
amazing.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Bell Witch podcast, created with love and magic by me, Swales, the Friendly Green Witch. I love to hear from you, and I absolutely love to celebrate you. If you have a podcast or a business, a witchy business, a pagan related topic you love to talk about, you can reach me on the Bell Witch podcast at yahoo.com. Send me a trailer and I will absolutely play it, because there is magic in sharing audiences amongst podcasts. Music by Jeff Harvey of Pixabay. The official Bell Witch photographer is the lovely Beverly Thornton. Thank you so much for choosing the Bell Witch podcast to fill your ears. Stay magical, witches.